Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. I'm Stewart Heath, your host, founder, and CEO of Harvard Grace Capital. We're very blessed today to have Kelly Ford with Edison Partners with us. She's taken time out as being the COO, Managing General Partner, I think is the correct terminology, of Edison Partners. When you got the C-level title, I know you got no time, so thank you for giving us some of yours today. So, Kelly, thank you for being here. All right, let's jump into it. Kelly, as you think over your career, is there an event that you would say was a game changer that put you on the path where you are today versus where a path perhaps you thought you were going in a different direction?
There's probably been a few of them. If I look back at my entire career, almost 30 years now, the most common thread is I've never held a job that somebody held before me. I was always the first one in that job, either raising my hand and grabbing at it and, making something my own and creating it, or someone saying, "Oh, we need this," and maybe you're the one to go do that. I worked in 5 startup and growth stage companies over 20 years or so before I became an investor. And while I was doing that, that was really my only common thread. Like, everything was new, and I love to build and do things new. But it probably wasn't until maybe the 4th company that I realized that was a pattern. And ultimately, just after my 5th company, and I wasn't looking to leave, the company was going well, growing fast, lots of capital, raised a lot of capital, great team, people I work with in a prior life. But at that point, I was offered an opportunity to shift from operating and business building to investing in the same type of companies that I had spent my career working in. I'd say that was the game changer, to be able to still take on a role that nobody's held before you. I was the first partner at Edison almost 11 years ago now that had a pure operating background. And the firm was at an interesting juncture where we had a founder succession, and we were transitioning, kind of evolving our investment strategy from venture to growth. And my experience working in growth stage companies, was the reason I was invited to kind of come and take on this role. And I thought at first, what am I going to do in an investment firm? But then again, I loved the idea of knowing what I knew about growth stage companies, but then learning the other part of this ecosystem that I was already existing in and playing a role in that. So to be able to take what I knew on business building to evaluate companies and develop investment theses and really truly help build value for the companies we were investing in was a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity and definitely a game changer. And I never looked back. It's the best job I've ever had, but I wouldn't have it if it wasn't for my prior 20 years doing what the teams do that we back every day.
Yeah. So when you were coming out of Michigan State, I think it is, did you know you wanted to be in business and grow startups?
No. My first major was pre-med, and then I wanted to be a veterinarian, but it was hard. Like, the classes were, and I was from a small town in Massachusetts, parochial schools, and going to a big school, hours and hours away in another part of the country. I wanted to enjoy the full experience as a freshman. So I changed my major, and folks told me that communications was easy. I'm like, oh, let's do that. I'll figure out what I'm going to do later. And I wound up, my first job out of college was in PR. So I used my major. My internships were in PR. So I used my major. But I was quickly drawn to software products and what it takes to build and launch products. And PR was such a sliver of a role in that for tech companies. So I think I found my way. Other than not holding a job that others held before me, the tech industry was a key thread, and that was interesting to me. I'm from Massachusetts and the Boston area, and there's so much going on there in tech when I graduated. So I knew that I wanted to be around that. It was just a matter of do what, and over time, PR turned into product and the business of product and go to market. And I just couldn't help myself being involved in all things in the business. And ultimately, I think that's what got me here, but it certainly wasn't the plan. I never even took a finance class in undergrad.
I love it. I love it. My father is the only person I ever knew that actually did for his entire career what he went to college to do. He was a CPA. I followed in his footsteps, and he literally had one job with the same company from the day he left Auburn University to the day he retired. It's like, I've never met any. I grew up thinking that was normal, and now I realize how rare that is.
My dad was the same way. He spent 34 years at Polaroid, and the idea of me working in startups and venture-backed companies, he's like, what are you doing? Did you learn nothing from me? Like, he was really all about the steady Eddie thing. And
he was a company man, I bet.
Company guy.
Yeah.
Polaroid was a great business back then, and
right.
He had the work ethic, and there's a lot I took from him, but working for the man, the big company, wasn't it.
Yeah, well, I love it when investment companies pull in people from operations and industry or whatever, because that's just an acknowledgement they don't know everything, and your perspective is invaluable to them, I'm sure. So if you don't mind, tell us about a time, because you and I have both been in business a long time, and we all have bumps in the road, usually maybe even as many as a dozen along the way. Tell us about a bump in the road that in your career that happened, and how you dealt with it. Maybe it changed your direction, maybe it didn't, but just something you had to overcome and how you did it.
Yeah, interestingly, my fourth sort of startup / growth company, tech company, was I was brought on we were changing business model. We were acquiring our largest competitor. There was just a lot of transformation going on. And that's why I was hired, to help lead in that. And I only spent about 18 months at this company. And the reason, there was a lot of exciting things going on, and I was thrilled to be a part of it and leading so much of it. But the CEO, if there was a spectrum of whimsy and overcommitted, he was we were at opposite ends, let's say. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but for a fact. But with all this transformation going on, and my leading a lot of it, we had very clear plans, deliverables, goals, timelines, and real economic, real financial impacts associated with each of these milestones. And we had to deliver on it. It was what our investors were expecting, our board, and it was really used the term game changer earlier, game changer in the market at that time to be doing the things we were doing. So if I was overcommitted to that, I would say the CEO, while we were great partners in all of it, started to get distracted and wanted to acquire the next company or take resources off the execution on the plan that we were all aligned on and put it on things that were not board supported, not part of the strategy right now. Like, it was all that whimsy and sort of entrepreneurial spirit, to put it in a positive way, of the CEO was at play. And it started to create some friction between the two of us. It wasn't enough for me where I was looking to leave. I was committed to the cause and mission and what we were going to get done. But I took a week's vacation and I came back, and he created a narrative that was just a complete red herring, and it resulted in my, separating from the company, not my choosing. And there was nothing about my performance that led to this. And I knew that. It was shocking. It was shocking to the management team, the company, and to the board and our investors. And so I felt validated, yeah. But at the same time, it was the first time as an executive that I ever had been pushed out. And it was, never mind the narrative around it, which was like completely ridiculous. I thought it would be this black mark on my resume and on my career, and how am I going to recover from this? What would he say? The industry is small. People getting put, like, I've never been in an environment where I even observed this happening to my peers, never mind happening to me. But at the end of the day, I think, I had a lot of anxiety around the what would people think? Would I land on my feet? How am I going to deal with this? And then in talking to folks, reached out and to feel all the support that ultimately I felt, and that nobody would believe. People who truly knew me knew that the reasons don't matter and it's not true. And that was the most important thing to me before the, where am I going to go work next? And ultimately, that board, Edison, my current firm, was an investor in that company. And God bless you, was that a sneeze?
Sorry.
So it was serendipitous in a strange way, because fast forward 2 years, my partners who were on that board, and I had a lot of board exposure working in that company. The whole reason I know Edison is because of the great work I did at that company. And the CEO ultimately was fired from that company, which felt, you don't wish things on, these things on people, but it felt right. And it wasn't because of my departure, certainly. It was for other reasons. But it was, it was personally emotional and very jarring. Right. And then as people started to reach out, and it started to just diffuse the whole situation. And I realized, this will not hurt me. And ultimately, I wouldn't have ended up here at Edison a couple years later if it wasn't for that experience. So everything happens for a reason. But I wasn't even inclined to reach out to people who were aware and close to the situation. I just retreated because I just assumed everybody would take the CEO's side, or there's a black mark, what's going to happen. And as it turns out, this happens to executives every day in all industries. In the interpersonal nature of being a leader, and sometimes styles just don't mix, like work styles, interpersonal connections or disconnections, and you either work to make it work or maybe you can't work. And a CEO decides who's on their team, and it was, well within his right to decide who he wanted around him, and who was in having people around him that challenged him wasn't what he wanted. So it's so clear to me now, and I was pretty worked up initially, and but there was just a support system around me that was well aware of the situation that helped me get out of that mental space. And ultimately, I was not slowed down at all by that. And honestly, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be here, because Edison was that company's investor. So
How long was it from when you left that one to where you landed in your next gig?
a month.
Yeah.
So quick. I hooked up with a group of people that we had a really nice run at a company before I joined the company where I was, separated from. It was kind of get the band back together. But I was happy to work with that group again. But within a month or two, I would have landed somewhere if it wasn't that, because, it turns out between recruiters and the network, you don't realize you have until you need it sometimes,
Right.
would have made that happen. So all for the best.
Yeah, I've been through. Didn't sound like I don't think mine was as severe as yours. There was sort of a mutual agreeing to part ways, but I was CFO for a group one time, and to me it seemed as though the CEO just didn't understand basic math, and it's just you just don't have the money, and we need to lay some people off. And by the way, I'll go first. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of times the CFOs are the ones saying, you can't afford me, right?
Yes, that's exactly where we were. And we'd been in capital raising mode, and that was sort of over. We played out all of our options, and just like, you don't need me, you need an accountant. So anyway, let's pivot a little bit. Couple of things. Next couple of questions are going to be just sort of personal and stylistic. And I always like to learn how. Are you okay if I refer to you as an entrepreneur? You're clearly a successful executive.
Yeah, I used to be. I think I still have it in me, though.
Absolutely. I think entrepreneurship is at least in part, mental illness. So yeah, I don't think we ever get over it completely. We, by that I'm referencing an article I read last year that it was the rate of occurrence of attention deficit disorder in entrepreneurs is like 12 times that of the general population. So
no doubt.
Well, yeah, we're all multitaskers.
Yeah,
so,
multi-thread, multitask. Yep.
Right, yeah. So here's the question. How do you stay current on the things that you need to know, and how do you learn new things? I imagine in your position, I don't know what y'all's investment thesis is, but you probably have to get up to speed whenever you're looking at a new potential investment. So how do you go about doing that? What's your secret sauce?
There's some comfort in, we invest in 3 key sectors within tech, fintech, healthcare tech, and what I'd call more broadly just kind of verticalized software that's sold to large enterprises. And I spent my career as an operator in vertical software, enterprise software. so I had to learn fintech, and now I invest in fintech. And I had to learn healthcare tech to a lesser degree, but enough. And in joining here, and we, this firm has a rich history in all three sectors well before I got here. And my partners here are experts. Everybody has a domain that they investments for. So there's an incredible amount of industry knowledge. And then we as a group, as a firm, every 18 months or so are refreshing the themes, kind of sub-sectors and sub-themes for each of our three sectors. So we'll all approach it knowing enough about the industry, but making sure we know where it's going and what we need to be expert on next. So there is a natural muscle in motion here around that from an investment perspective. But honestly, I mean, you can be in this industry. When we just ran into something with one of our portfolio companies, and something one of our co-investors pulled that was just shocking. And even my partner Chris, who's the managing partner and has been here for over 20 something years, and in this business investing over 20 something years, none of us had ever seen this before. An investor do what this investor did, and we're running into those things all the time in our business where you just come across, like, how do you deal with this situation with a board, with a CEO, with a management team, with even just something you find out during diligence, and how do you navigate it? Does it kill a deal or not? How do you get around it? Every day there's something like that. And I'm very comfortable with what I know and what I do not know. And I think it's a really important to get to that point in your career where you don't have to know all the answers. No one's expecting you to know all the answers. And to be comfortable with what you don't know and lean on the people around you to get you smart on something you don't know. I've done that since day one here. I've just elbowed my way into anything that interests me or anything I needed because there was a gap in my knowledge, my experience, or just facing a situation that you haven't faced before. And luckily, this is a group that, it comes my way too. Like, they haven't seen something before, but it says I have, or I've invested in two companies focused in this industry and they're looking at it for the first time, or I've worked in certain companies with certain business models or certain things. So I think that's just how we work here, and we wouldn't be as successful as we are without the ability to lean on one another. But I think being comfortable with what you don't know and lean on people around you or go find the experts, I'm very quick to do that. And as I get older, you just realize so much more that you don't know. You're supposed to know more as you get older, and I'm sure about what I do, but I am kind of wowed every day with what I don't, and thank God there's someone to pull on that can help you with that.
I used to joke with my dad much later in life that, I've just gotten stupider because I knew when I was 18, I knew a whole lot more than I do now. I had all the answers back then, and now I don't think I know the answer to anything. So very, very true, very good. So are there any of favorite podcasts or anything like that you use to learn from business related?
What I like.
You don't have to name this one.
It's interesting. I'd say there's there are some podcasts that are like, I love the Daily Stoic. I've been told over my adult life that I can be stoic or asked if I am a stoic. And I've never really thought about it till people asked me about it. And so then I went and studied it. And it turns out I think I am. But I do really like, what's his name? Ryan. I'm going to bring it up on my phone. Ryan Holiday, that's his name, as an author and as a podcast. So he has a podcast called The Daily Stoic. So I'm a big fan of that. The Diary of a CEO is a very good podcast. And what's the podcast? You may not know this. It's not necessarily business, but I find it hysterical. With Jason Bateman, and I'm going to Google it right now. These are the things I can't remember: names of songs, albums, movies, and podcasts.
Yeah. Or actors and actresses.
Oh, yeah. Smartless. It's called Smartless.
Yeah.
They bring in a lot of people that are maybe household names or people from Hollywood or what have you, but the questions and the topics are so smart, and you get ridiculousness, but you do get just pearls, some of it around the business of that business. And it's an industry I know nothing about, I have nothing to do with, but they're all very entertaining, and I think it's really authentic and it's funny, but there's like real knowledge to be gained from it as well. But I love the Daily Stoic and the Diary of a CEO are probably like the two I do the most. But I've got a bunch of them on here. It just depends. The spirit moves you, Yeah.
What mood you're in? Got it. Thank you for that. Let's pivot again to the financial world, and we like to learn what our entrepreneur guests invest in with their personal investable dollars. Not asking for any dollar amounts or even any specific stock picks or anything like that. What type of asset classes do you like to invest in with your personal funds?
Honestly, my personal funds are all wrapped up in our funds at this firm. So my capital commitments we're now investing out of Fund 11, our newest fund. And I've been here since Fund 7. And our funds grow bigger each fund, and that makes my capital commitment grow with each fund. So the majority of my investments have been investing in, what we do in private companies, high growth private tech companies. I have started dabbling, especially locally too, in Nashville, and in investing in very early stage startups that are in industries. They may have a tech play to them, and who knows, maybe someday they'll reach a point where Edison would invest directly. But it's where I've been wowed by a founder and a business model, like turning a business model on its head or creating an entirely new model, and being local. I've only lived here in Nashville. October was a year, and feeling connected to the ecosystem and all the growth that's happening here in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's presented opportunities to back some of these founders in a way that personally I find very fulfilling, to be able to help them not only with my money, but my time, because they're here locally. So you can grab a coffee or a drink or help them interview their next hires or whatever it is. So I've been dabbling in that with the little liquidity that I have and that I'm not putting in, back into our funds. And I like real estate too, just personal real estate. I think at some point when I'm semi-retired or retired, I love renovating, homes, and I'm not afraid of a big project, a big ugly renovation project, and I love home design and inside and out. So, sometime in the future, I hope to be able to spend more time on that. But I have two homes, in both of those cases, I've gone all in on those types of projects, and hopefully it pays off when I sell them someday.
I'm sure it will. That's great. And frankly, it's the expected answer. Most entrepreneurs are almost 100% invested in their own. Yeah, their own thing. And why not? It's what you know. It's what you can control, and stuff like that. So, all right, we're coming down to our last question, and this is really my favorite question. Kelly, if you had a mentor, if you were mentoring somebody, or if somebody just wanted to follow in your footsteps, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Earn it.
And what does that mean?
It means you need to have the grit and the commitment, and nothing is handed to you. No one should be entitled. You have to work for it, make things your own, take ownership, and run at what you want every single day, and that's earning it. I think generationally, some of, not mine or yours, but kind of the younger generations now need to be reminded of that. And maybe not reminded, but shown what that looks like. Because I hate to make a blanket statement, but I've seen it a lot in our companies and even candidates I interview, where there may be a willingness and an enthusiasm to succeed and put in the work, but the earn it piece is just so important. And I'd also say for women, particularly in my industry, there aren't a lot of women. It's getting better. And they're in women in industries where there are few. I've seen generationally too, where there's sometimes maybe an expectation of, oh, well, I'm a diversity candidate, or you want more women on your management team, or you need women doing this, or you need women on this team doing this and doing that. And I take, yes, that may be the case, but I actually take personal offense when I hear words like that out of very capable young women's mouths, because they should be earning it. And it doesn't matter what gender you are. May the best man or woman, win, but they do it because they've earned it. So,
I love that. Kelly, thank you for your time today. If anybody in the audience wanted to reach out to you, how do you prefer that they do that?
LinkedIn, or my contact information is also on our website at edisonpartners.com.
Okay. Well, we'll pull those links and put them in the show notes for anybody who's paying attention and wants to dig in there and reach out to Kelly. Once again, thank you for your time. We appreciate your story. And thank you to the audience for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. We hope you'll come back and watch another.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com/guest. We'd love to hear your story.